As you can see, most likely, with by my scarf and perhaps even by my name, I'm a Muslim or the practitioner of the faith of Islam. Now, what's interesting is that I'm going to set my timer as well so that I make sure that I don't go forward the time allocated. What's interesting is that within Islamic theology, there's this huge emphasis that on the hereafter, right? So, and the act of forgiving others, it's actually crucial for the success in the hereafter. For one who forgives is actually acting in such a way that allows for forgiveness to happen to him or her from the divine or from God. So this notion of forgiveness is really key and really central. Now, in theory, this moral perceptive forgiveness sounds like a beautiful thing, and it is a beautiful thing. But however, when one finds themselves in a position in which they have been purposefully wronged, in a way that was not deserving of that person, the act of forgiveness doesn't always come as easily, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all human. So it's really precisely at this moment, for someone like myself, a Muslim, it's precisely at this moment that one is beckoned to look into the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as an example. For he was known, his whole life was known, his character was known as an embodiment of the Quran itself. So God shows us in the character of the Prophet Muhammad within the Islamic theology, that the model of a compassionate man, right? He treated everyone, his friends and his foes, men and women, rich and old, with kindness and with respect. Even at the time of Islamic history, when he was there, even when the pagan Arabs at that time reacted to his message of monotheism with nothing but extreme hatred, he showed in response love and kindness, right? And this characteristic of being forgiving and one who's embodying compassion was something that was exemplified in so many incidents in his life. Two quick incidents that I'd like to focus on. One was an incident of an old woman who made a habit of throwing trash in the way of the Prophet Muhammad whenever he passed by, right? Whenever he passed by his house. So one day when he walked out of his home, though, there was no garbage. And this made him really inquire about the old woman and what happened, because he was so used to this, right? He was so used to picking up the garbage, putting it away, and going about his day. So when he inquired about him, he found out that that she was in fact sick, that she was ill. So the Prophet went to visit her and offered her assistance that she might need. And the old woman was so extremely humbled and also ashamed at the same time of her actions in the light of the concern that the Prophet showed, right? It wasn't a means of retribution, but in fact, a means completely opposite of that, of compassion and care and of forgiveness. Another example that is particularly really heartbreaking to me is when I look back at the life of the Prophet is, he was offering his prayers at the Kaaba at that time. And the unbelievers at that time brought the feces of a camel, right? And then as he was in laying that, and he was in prostration in prayer, they dumped that on his head and his back, right? And at that time, Fatima, his beloved youngest daughter, who at that time was like 6 or 7, heard this and came running to him, and she had tears in her eyes. And she started quickly, cleaning her father, right, of this. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, noticed tears in her eyes and in fact reassured her, right, saying that, my daughter, do not worry, do not cry, for God will protect your father, right? So again, we see this over and over again, this person who did not embark in retribution, but rather embodied the act of forgiveness and kindness. So another thing that the Prophet would remind people and would remind those who would seek retribution on his behalf, he would say, no, don't do that, because we don't know what this person that has wronged me has the potential of becoming, right? We don't know what's in that heart and what can turn that heart around. And in fact, my interaction with that person in a result of what they might have done to me might in fact be the thing that turns that individual's heart around. So these were extreme, examples of forgiveness and mercy that we always saw. So in regards to how it relates to me, as Samia said, we came here when I was 8 years old, and we came to this little small Midwestern town, and and we were the only Muslims. And as such, we would repeatedly get death threats. I mean, repeatedly in mail, in messages sent to us, things like that. And my parents did, inform the authorities so they would patrol our house, but that was the extent of the retribution, right? And what they would tell us is that we don't know who these people are, but you forgive and you react with everyone with nothing but kindness and care, right? So let's fast forward 20 some years. My elder brother became a doctor, and he's actually the physician of that town even still today. But 25 years into our living in America, what we come to find out is that one of his patients was in fact the person that sent those death threats, right? So let's think about that. Let's think about how that heart changes, right? The one person who, the place that once wanted us to leave under any circumstance has not only become our home, but the individual that sent us those death threats now has his life in many stances in the hands of the one that he wished death upon. And that's the power of forgiveness, right? That's the power of compassion. It's about how that this mere moral precept is so powerful that it can change one's heart, that you can go from hatred to love and to respect and to compassion. And if we do that with each one of us, with each incident that we may face, then imagine the ripple effect in creating a world that's not defined by violence and by hatred and by retribution, but rather by forgiveness and by compassion and by love. And that is something to me that's very powerful. And that is what my faith has taught me. And that is how I hope to exemplify it when encountered with such incidents in which I feel wronged. Thank you.
We may seem different,